I want to know, what do you think about this? Your unvarnished opinion. Right now in front of God and everybody.
Most of it is produced in batch systems, very similar to a traditional Scottish approach.
So we became an early target for Prohibition, and Statesville was forced into Prohibition in 1903.
But we'll give up that yield in order to get a better finished product.
This episode of Crafted Conversations is presented by the American Distilling Institute.
American Distilling Institute was one of the first to really say, we're going to celebrate this industry. One of the first really meaningful opportunities that we had to go into community was at an ADI annual event.
I'm Allan Cogan. Join me as I highlight small businesses with interviews on site at distilleries, breweries, and more. My mission is to share the stories of the awesome people behind the craft. Welcome to Crafted Conversations. Well, Pete, we're here
Allan.
at Southern Distilling.
Yep, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
This is such a pleasure. I've heard so much about you guys.
It's a high point of my week. Of course, the week just started.
It's Monday, so it's a low bar.
In the morning. No, seriously, it's great to have you here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I have looked forward to coming to your spot because as I told you off camera, I hadn't realized how important this area was to North Carolina history. And I want to talk about that. But before we get to all that stuff, I want to know about you. How did Pete get into distilling? How did you start in this crazy world?
So, quick story, because we could make it a long story. But the quick story is that, so Vienna, my wife, and my business partner, we both grew up in family businesses. We went to college. We started our careers. She went to work in public health with the state of North Carolina and California. I went into my field, which was engineering. But we always had this just almost innate passion to get back into a family business, to build your own thing, right? And it's not necessarily about the destination, it's about the journey, right? And the building part is something that, she and I have been engaged in projects ranging from getting married and raising kids to running a farm and now running this business together over the last 12 years. But even though we were in unrelated fields, the fields that we were in were very relatable to the distilling business. We knew that we wanted to do something that was ag-centric because, we've got a family farm that's close by here. We looked at originally doing a winery in a vineyard, and we discovered pretty quickly that was a great way to take a lot of money and make a little bit of money. No offense to anybody who's doing that out there, more power to you. But, so we grew up and went to school, and even though I'm from North Carolina, went to school in California. And we were, studying in Northern California when these little tiny companies like Sierra Nevada, Anchorstein, Ballast Point, they were really beginning to be very disruptive and build not just significant businesses in really traditional, industry,
Right.
but they were being super successful and they had a great culture. We're like, man, that's so cool. Anyway, fast forward, 20 years, and we saw the same opportunity to get into the distilling space, moved out of that whole wine idea. But, that's how we got here. But, again, that was 12 years ago when we started the company in 2013 now. But the research actually probably extended back several years before we actually established Southern Distilling Company.
Okay. Were you a big whiskey person before getting into this? Was it something that, or you were, it sounded like maybe you're a wine guy first.
No, I was not a wine guy. Never been a wine guy. No. I enjoy wine. I'm very ignorant when it comes to wine. And so, my drink of choice was bourbon. I grew up in a household that bourbon was what you drank. If you were going to drink, you drink bourbon, right?
Right.
But, I get this question a lot. Oh, so it was your passion? No. It was just the right industry at the right time, and it just happened to be a whole lot sexier than so many other things that we could have done.
Sure.
But the beverage alcohol space, specifically American whiskey, just checked a lot of boxes for us. There was, when we started the company, it was a very fledgling industry. The idea of craft bourbon and craft whiskey in general was just beginning to become a thing.
Right.
So we were early adopters. There were 275 DSPs in the United States when we started. There were 5 in North Carolina. Wow. Today, there's more than 3,000, I think, DSPs in the United States, about 140 in North Carolina. Again, we were kind of there at the impetus at the beginning, but we entered the industry with really a different idea about what a craft distillery could be and what the craft industry needed.
It's so wild that the craft market has exploded the way it has. And for you to have been on the forefront of that, especially in North Carolina, when North Carolina has been kind of small in recent years when it comes to distilling, and there's a resurgence, but there's a lot of history there. We talked a little bit off camera about how prideful you are of that, bringing back and revitalizing North Carolina's distilling history.
Right.
Tell me about that passion.
So as everybody knows in this industry, we love our stories, and we've got a lot of stories, right? Just remember, 2 of them are true, right? Which means there's a lot of creative artistic license applied to, the stories, the mythology that we share in this industry. There's nothing wrong with mythology, but when you have a story that's based in truth, that in history, it's even more interesting, right? Because it actually happened, and we have that history here in North Carolina. That it's a forgotten history, and we're doing a lot to try to educate people. But there was a point in time when North Carolina was not only a major alcohol producer for the nation, our early nation, but Statesville, North Carolina, which is where we are, it was called the liquor capital of the world at one point. So short story is that there were more than 450 federally permitted, licensed, tax-paying distilleries operating in a 50-mile radius of Statesville. But these weren't large-scale industrial operations. These were farm-based distilleries. So this is an early example of value-added ag, okay? And so these early farmers, et cetera, they discovered, hey, if we make ethanol, we get more for it than if we're just taking grains and fruits, into town. Plus, it's easier to transport. So the concept of value-added ag, number one, transportation, number 2. Transportation probably is the most important reason that this industry developed here. So if you think back 120, 130 years ago, there were no interstates. No. There weren't even paved roads.
Right.
So if you want to ship something that's heavy, alcohol is heavy, right? It's got to go by boat or by rail. And we had rail. We had a lot of rail. So the community of Statesville was founded at the crossroads of 2 Native American trading paths, which then became trading routes for the early nation during the colonial days. And what happens on these routes? Well, that's where people settle. That's where towns are established. If you're going to run a rail line, where do you run it? Well, you run it where there are people.
Right.
And so these early trading paths led to early rail. Then it became a pretty big business. And it was the advent of that rail in the mid and late 1800s that led to the distilling industry. Rectifiers came from the Northeast. They recognized that they needed to be in an area where we had the opportunity to do production and we had the transportation. We had both of those things. So you've got those 450 plus farm families who now have a value-added ag product. They're bringing it into the rectifiers who are redistilling it and then packaging it, putting it on a train, and then shipping it out across the nation. But remember, what is the nation? It's a very small sliver of what it is today. It's just the East Coast, right?
I was going to say, not past the Mississippi.
Yeah, primarily. At that point in time, Kentucky was the Wild West.
Right.
It had not really been settled.
Right.
Daniel Boone, before he went west, he stayed here for a couple of years during several early American skirmishes that occurred here, French and Indian War among them. But so he lived in Fort Dobbs which is 4 miles from this distillery, before he went off to settle the West, which at that point is Ohio, Kentucky, etc. You had that early rectifying and alcohol production business that grew up, and it was super successful, almost so successful or too successful, I would say, that we began to become a target, right? So the early anti-saloon league, temperance movement, it starts in the Northeast, Maine, right? And then they settle their sights on a little town in the middle of nowhere, North Carolina, called Statesville, because Statesville had become prolific as a major exporter of this evil ethanol product, right?
Right.
So we became an early target for Prohibition, and Statesville was forced into Prohibition in 1903, nearly 17 years before the rest of the country. And the result is that a lot of those early rectifiers moved out of the area, but those farmers, the 450, this was a major livelihoods, big business, they can't take the land. So they just keep doing it, but they're doing it illicitly. So there's the birth of moonshining and bootlegging here, which was a huge industry. Transportation is still important. Can't do it by rail. So we do it by car, train, I mean, not train, but, horse and buggy, whatever.
Right.
Which leads to the birth of NASCAR.
Right.
So everybody knows that relationship between NASCAR and bootlegging, and they know that it happened here in central North Carolina. They don't know the rest of the story, which is, well, it happened because this was a big industry and we needed transport, and this is how we did it.
Yeah, and I almost feel ashamed as someone who loves whiskey and Americana that I wasn't fully aware of the importance of Statesville in that
Well,
story.
I mean, look, I grew up here. I was fourth generation. I didn't know about it. My dad didn't know about it. It's a really, really incredible and colorful history.
Yeah.
That's kind of been lost, and we've taken it upon ourselves to collect artifacts. So I showed you, a collection of the crockery. Most alcohol was shipped in crockery,
Right.
versus glass as it is today.
Right.
And so we've got this incredible collection of old brands that were produced here and then shipped by rail. But maybe more impressive and more just compelling, we've got the correspondence from these original rectifiers and their clients in the Northeast, the original tax books.
Sure.
We have these tax books, tax records. It's all written out longhand. Just really, really interesting history.
Is there a record of ingredients used or processes?
No, we don't have any physical evidence of ingredients or processes. We know that in that time, bourbon wasn't the thing that it is today. We take it for granted. Well, bourbon's always been a huge thing. At that time, again, 120, 140 years ago, it was corn liquor,
Right.
which technically could be called bourbon, right, if it checks some other boxes, but it was marketed and advertised as corn liquor. But the high dollar product of the day was rye whiskey, and rye was being produced up and down the East Coast. It was being produced in Maryland and New York, and a lot of it was being produced right here in North Carolina.
That's wild. I love that I mean, it's probably a pretty prideful thing to actually be from here and then also be part of revitalizing that history. Do you feel some sort of obligation to, and when you're doing this craft, to be like, hey, I'm going to own this history and sell it and show it to people? I shouldn't say sell it.
Well, marketing is central to our business.
It really is.
Yeah. So selling that history is important. The cool thing is I don't have to make it up.
Right.
And so many of the histories that, that we've heard about with various brands over the years have, maybe there's a little more mythology than there was fact.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to kind of, no, this is factual. Here's the written record. This is actually what happened. Again, I wish we had more in terms of, production method. I don't know how useful it would be today, because we're using different methods.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could see it if you were to, have some small play 50-gallon still that was reminiscent just for that special single barrel.
Yeah. So right. So, we do have a collection of these historic
Like
heritage brands. And we've released one that I showed you called Hunting Creek.
Yeah.
In its day, Hunting Creek was purportedly one of the widest, most broadly distributed whiskeys. It was a rye whiskey. It's named for Hunting Creek, which is about 5 miles north of where we're sitting right now. So it's named for a real place.
Okay.
And, again, we look forward over the years kind of not only, collecting those brands, but releasing those heritage brands, in a series of heritage products that really celebrate and speak to that history.
Sure. That's awesome. Well, and I think the biggest thing that I love hearing about your brand too is that you don't just do your own brand.
All right.
You help out a lot of the other smaller guys.
Yeah.
So was that I want to talk about that and tell me how that starts, but was that what you wanted to do going into this? Or what was your calculation when you started a distillery?
So when we started the distillery, we wanted to develop our brands.
Yeah.
Right. But we knew that takes a lot of cash, takes a lot of money, takes a lot of time. And it's not something that you do overnight. And we didn't want to release a vodka or gin. I drink vodka, I drink gin, nothing but respect. But, we're a whiskey company. And, so we knew that we had to come up with a way to pay the bills. And the way to pay the bills and really build so we are a craft distillery at scale. Right? So, we run a couple of continuous columns. Of course, we do have a pot still that we use for experimentation, but most of what we do is run on a continuous column. And, 10, 12 years ago, when we were looking at our business model, we knew that when we grew up, we wanted to, have this great brand from North Carolina that was enjoyed around the world. But we knew that that's going to take time, right?
Yeah.
And really, the contract production piece was really from the offset. We knew that's what we wanted to do, and that's how we wanted to get there. And we love that part of the business. So today we produce for more than 160 brands and clients around the world. Wow. It's one of the most joyful things in our business is working with another brand owner and helping that person achieve his or her dream and helping them not just select from, hey, here's this library of product, but really help them put their signature on their product. So that's one of our taglines. Your product made your way at our facility with our help.
So that they're here hands-on.
Not all the time.
Okay.
But that option is always there, and those are the brands that we really love working with. So, we enjoy, again, that creative process. So, TJ Gamble, aka Bruzel, he was here last week. He was here for two reasons. One was we were helping him do his final blending on his Oak Bowery brand, which he'll be releasing using our distillate, but it's his product that he and his wife Jill did the blending, and they did it just the way they wanted it. You can't just get that anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's something that we offer. The other big part of that visit was the release of our American single malt, which I know we'll talk about later, but kind of blew his mind with that product.
I'm selfishly, in my brain, if I had started a brand, I would feel more care and desire to work on my brand first. But it sounds like once you got into this, you really enjoyed helping the other brands. Is that a more enjoyable part of it?
Well, the other thing is you can't rush the product.
Yeah.
You can't rush the process.
Right.
So we didn't want to scream to market with a 2-year-old straight product and say, oh, taste my 2-year-old straight product. And, we wanted to have that runway available to us and the contract production provider. But it's a great business, and we've seen over time that, other folks that are in the contract production space we're in the contract production space, but now we're not. And now we're back into it. We love that space.
Yeah.
Even, when this brand becomes, the bigger part of the picture, we don't intend to stop the contract production piece because it's an important part of who we are, our DNA, and it's something that we enjoy immensely. Again, being a part of that creative process with other people is, it's immensely gratifying. But I want to answer your question because I didn't answer it completely. did we want to focus? We did release our product,
Yeah.
but we didn't release our product with our distillate.
Oh, okay.
And we're completely forthright about that.
Sure.
When we released our first product 10 years ago, it was an MGP product.
Ah.
And it wasn't until about 5 years ago when our product was sufficiently ready that we really phased out that MGP distillate and went 100% to our distillate. But for essentially the past 5 years, it's been 100% our distillate.
Gotcha. No, I had no idea that you guys had.
Yeah,
sourced.
we think that we think it's important to be forthright about what you do and where the product comes from.
Yeah.
And that MGP product helped us, really get the brand established. Now we're happy today that it's our product, but those roots and that foundation are always there.
I think one of the things that people think about, especially those who aren't fully in the weeds of the market, they hear sourcing, they automatically think MGP.
We want them to not automatically think MGP. Nothing but respect for the guys at MGP and a lot of the other contract producers that are out there. But, MGP has done a great job of helping stand up other brands with good product, right?
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that product. We just also recognize that there comes a point in time for brands, some sooner, some later, when the ability to differentiate becomes important. And the ability to tell that story with authenticity is always important. So for those brands, we're here. For those brands that need to be able to put that signature on there, that want to be a part, like TJ did with his Oak Bowery brand, and want to come in and do that blending and do that development. We've got the library of 65,000 barrels and the ability to help create those unique products and those unique stories with that authentic voice.
I tell you what, if my library had this, I would have read more. No, I'm curious too with the calculation of balance with your own brand, and then also probably the larger part of the business, right, which is a contract. Do you have a lot of room to kind of just have fun and squirrel away things, or do you have to really think about it?
Yeah, you walked past some really, really, interesting cask today, and it was a test. I'm not sure he passed because he didn't say, "What are those?" So
I was letting you do your thing.
We showed him a lot of stuff today, guys. So give him a break. He's seen a lot, and I talk a lot. He's like, "I've been here for 2 weeks already," but
we're a barrel in.
But no, we get the opportunity to do all sorts of experimental stuff. So, which we really enjoy. So we have some, 60-year-old Armagnac cask.
Ooh.
That you walked by, those big.
Yeah.
That's.
I didn't say anything. I saw them.
Yeah. So those are some historic Armagnac casks that we are aging some of our 70, 16, 14 wheated bourbon, aka Paragon, in right now. So those little LTOs and that experimentation it's always fun.
That's one of the things that I've always loved about crafts. When I travel around and I talk to people like you are your own boss. You don't have really a big corporate PowerPoint monster to answer to. You can kind of make decisions on the fly. And I'm sure as you've gotten bigger, you're probably less on the floor than you'd like to be. Maybe you are there every day.
Some people would argue I'm on the floor too much. Depends on who you talk to.
We're doing talking head interviews with the employees later.
Yeah.
No, but I love that the craft is able to do more play. There's more room to kind of do the thing.
Yeah.
And the Buffalo Traces and the Jim Beams and the Jack Daniels, they have their history, they have their great product.
There's nothing wrong with it.
No.
But it's a big brand, and the consumer expects that product when they go to the store to buy that bottle.
Right.
Now, I think the other thing that we've seen with some of the folks that you've mentioned is that they're also having their own fun. They've got their LTOs that are unobtainium. They're, you can't get them.
Right.
The neat thing about our LTOs is that, you can usually get them.
Yeah.
Right. And they're really pretty good.
Yeah.
Some people would say they punch above their weight.
Sure. One of the things that I love about this space too is a community. I love how close knit both distilling and brewing, I think, has a very nice. I don't know much about the wine industry. Maybe they're all snobs, but that guys all work together. I think there is a lot, especially because what you do with contracting, you work and help to build brands.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a sense of competition in the way that other places have.
That's one thing that's always struck me about this industry is that even when, I sit on the board at Discus, Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, right? And, just about everybody else that's there is way bigger than I am. There's a lot of strategics there. But what's really cool is, everybody puts their pants on the same way, right? We're all fighting the same challenges in the market today, and there's lots of challenges today.
Yep.
And, for the most part, at this tier one producer level, I find that it's kind of a rising tide raises all ships mentality. So I'll be giving a talk at ADI, in a month or two, and I'm going to be talking a lot about our production processes and what we do to not just operate a sustainable operation, from an environmental responsibility standpoint, but it's also more profitable sometimes to do things in a more sustainable way. I'm happy to share that message. I'm happy to share that. Now, there's certain things about what we do that they're our secret. But for the most part, if someone calls us, hey, we're having a problem with this, we're having a problem with that, we're going to jump in and try to help them solve the problem. And we experienced the same sort of support when we were building this facility and establishing, what we do. One of the fondest memories I have was I had lunch with Max Shapiro one day at I think it was at Discus. And, he and I were keenly interested in the same thing, the same problems, just at different scales.
Sure.
And we had such great interaction, just kind of talking about it. We were talking about spent grains. That's the other side of the business. We make all this distillate, but if you can't get rid of the spent grains, we're going to stop making distillate. So, anyway, that's you don't get that in any other industry.
No. And I think it's a testament to craft and our ability to come together, especially at all the conferences that exist. Every time I've been there, it's always camaraderie.
Yeah,
I love that. It's when you win something, or you have a good product, or you have a new experiment, and everyone's like, "Wow, this is awesome! What are you doing? Tell me about it."
Yeah.
But I also love that it's a lot of people who have. I wish I had the stats offhand. I don't know if you've ever seen any of the research, but how many of craft distillers are people who retired from a previous career and brought all that knowledge from that previous career into the distillation area, like you as an engineer.
You see that in craft.
Yeah,
we don't see it at the strategics, and this isn't to throw shade on the strategics because they're good at what they do, but we don't see a ton of innovation coming out of the big strategic houses. That's beginning to change with things like the Beam Institute, which we think is fantastic. But over the last decade, a lot of the innovation has come from the folks that weren't in the industry because, a lot of times you're in an industry, we do that because that's what we do. Right. Particularly if it's a very traditional industry like distillation, like bourbon. Well, that's what we do. That's how we do it. Well, that's not really a reason. And one of the things that we've done, and I think that we see in this craft space is, well, I'm not afraid to ask a question. I don't know. I didn't do it that way because I've never done it. So we're going to ask why do it that way. We're really going to question that tradition. And sometimes there's a great reason for that traditional methodology. Other times it's because, well, that's the limit of technology that existed 75 years ago.
Right.
If that's basically, that is not a good reason to keep doing it because that's the limit of technology 75 years ago.
Yeah.
We talked about this today, open top fermentation, right? So we absolutely embrace open top fermentation because we've got that interplay with the wild yeast, right? And we want that product that's produced here in Statesville, North Carolina, to have the terroir of Statesville, North Carolina, because it's unique.
Yeah.
And it produces a great product. So it's the interplay of the wild yeast. It's the aging conditions. It's the minerality of the soil where we grew that grain.
Right.
All of that plays into that final and finished product. That's a great reason to do things in a traditional method.
Sure.
Right. Other things, I won't go overly deep into the thermodynamics, but how we manage BTUs and how we manage industrial processes. Automation is not a bad word.
Right.
Automation can be your friend. if you're using the automation to really drive towards the art. In other words, if we use the technology to allow us to do things that we could not have done otherwise, to drive into that craft and drive into that art, that's a great thing.
Yes.
That's a great reason to be non-traditional.
Yeah.
So we have to balance this very traditional space with the new ways and techniques and capabilities that we see primarily coming out of the craft side.
Well, I think going on the tour today with you and you walking through all the things that you designed as an engineer in your prior career and all the things that you had a hand on, it really sold me on the fact that, this is not a press a button, leave it, forget for a week and everything is just made on a perfect, AI is taking over kind of thing. You're using it as an engineering enhancement to the human craft.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yep. So we're taking, the people are still here. The people are still integral to the process.
Right.
But we're not asking the people to do busy work. We're not asking the people to babysit.
Yeah.
We're asking our staff to create, to innovate, to optimize, to make things better.
Right.
And when we aren't having them labor with, again, babysitting the machine, it opens up new opportunities for them to really elevate the craft. And I think that we see that in these products.
How I'm curious about the setup. Do you have a head distiller? Are you the head distiller? What's the hierarchy?
I never used to use this term, but the marketing folks in the room kind of require. I always said that the term Master Distiller was overused and underdeserved. And today I am the Master Distiller. I never, wore that hat until really the past 12 months.
Sure.
But after doing it 12 years, I think maybe I've earned it. So, maybe 10 years ago, not so much.
Yeah.
But no, when it comes to the blending, when it comes to how we run and define our processes, I have a lot of help.
Yeah.
But, I'm kind of the lead there.
So I think that was leading into my question about how much of a hand you actually have on the product. Are you one of the approvers and sign-offs?
Well, I am the only approver. I
Okay.
am the only person who can sign off. So anything, if you love it, that's great. If you don't love it, it's my fault. Okay. But when it comes to not just the fermentation processes, what we do with the grain, which we should talk about at some time because
Yes.
that actually has a big impact on the distillate. And then ultimately, we're surrounded by all these barrels. All these barrels are made of 30 to 40 individual pieces of wood called staves. Every one is going to impart a different flavor profile, and it's going to have a different story in that blend. And, I'm the guy that's saying, this is how we're going to do the blend. I'm the guy saying, okay, that's a single barrel and this isn't, so I have engaged other people because as we've grown, it can be fatiguing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if it's in a bottle that says Southern Star, I was the guy that said that's Southern Star.
Do you have people who are on the floor who have ideas that you entertain that you're like, hey, let's try that?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So
that's a craft mark
yeah,
too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you saw that we've got a pot still.
Yep.
So we've got a 250-gallon pot still, and we just kind of use that as our test bed. I don't tell them what to run.
Okay.
I just let them go wild. So, whatever sort of experimental, grain process malt, I don't always love it, but, that's how you learn is through that experimentation. And then we can scale up to the larger system from there.
Before we get to the grain, because I want to talk about that, it's very important for your story, and I loved what you talked about before we sat down here. I got to know, now we talked about it, what is one of the most wazoo experiments that have come out of the still?
One of the most what?
Wazoo, crazy, wild, that you probably never sold.
So it wasn't so much as an experiment as it was a development of process.
Okay.
And it's really, today, it's not that far out. When we did it, it was pretty far out. But we worked with a company out of Mexico that produces a lot of agave, a lot of agave syrup. And they needed, for various reasons, a U.S.-produced distillate, primarily to go into RTDs. And so, again, we got to work with them on, just how to take a a grain on production process and tweak it so that we could run, this product that has no grain in it at all. It's produced from a syrup, just like rum.
Right.
And we've run a lot of rum. So it wasn't so much that, that part of the process, starting with the syrup-based feed source. It was the fact that agave is it's run really, really differently.
Sure.
So a lot less rectification.
Mm-hmm.
We want a product that's dirty by intention, right?
Sure.
And whiskey is dirty by intention, but agave is like a whole nother world.
Yeah.
And so learning to run a stripping column and a doubler that really wants to push out 125 to 140 proof, and then pushing out a sub 100 proof low wine, and then a high wine that was just north of 100 proof to make a really, really beautiful distillate,
Yeah.
but had all of this stuff in it that ordinarily we would work pretty hard to get rid of. Again, this is going way deep into how we run the still, but
Yeah.
that was nuts. And this great story. So, we've worked really, really closely with the folks at Vendome for years. And I called Rob Sherman and I was like, dude, so Rob is at Vendome. He's been the fourth generation family owned company. I called Rob on a Saturday. I'm like, dude, we're struggling. We just we're trying to get this thing to work the way that we want it. And we're not able to. And so they've done a lot of work for Herradura.
Mm-hmm.
He calls one of the chief distillers, process guys at Herradura on a Saturday, who takes the call, puts us together, and we suss out how to tweak this column and this doubler, to get a great product. Now talk about rising tide, right? And we go way outside bourbon, and we're bringing two nations and two native distillates kind of together. We're producing an agave on a stripping column that was designed to run bourbon.
Right.
That's cool.
Wow.
That's way cool. I love telling that story.
And that's probably a lot of lessons learned too.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if he learned anything, but we learned a lot. Now, should that gentleman ever come in and say, "I would like to know more about how we run grain on bourbon or rye," we can be helpful there.
You're not doing an agave spirit, are you? Or do you have one?
I have one. It's still resting.
Okay.
It's getting a lot. It's a extra añejo at this point.
Ooh.
So it's been barreled now for 6 years.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second use barrels.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we hinted at the grain a couple times. Tell me about that, because I know you have your own farms.
Yeah.
Was that always a thing that you wanted to do when you started this, is have your own grain, use your own grain from North Carolina, be local?
Yeah, and if I were better at marketing and storytelling, I would say yes, that was by design. But no, it was not. We wanted, look, as everybody who's watching this knows, any of these products, these are all agricultural products.
100%.
These all start with grain, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, the average consumer doesn't really put that together, but I think most of your fan base understands that. And so we wanted a product that tied the whole ag play back in. But it was never our intention as we were building and designing the process to grow the grain, much less a majority of the grain, which is what we do today. But it was through necessity that we determined that we needed to produce this grain, particularly the corn. And the reasoning is that when we started, we were sourcing from a big multinational producer of corn. And even though they're a big multinational producer of corn, we had a lot of variability in this sourced corn.
Sure.
A lot of variability in what was in the truck means a lot of variability in what's coming off of the column. And we don't want that. Specifically, we saw some hydrogen sulfide generation, in the fermentation process, and then ultimately that plays through in distillation. We didn't love it at all. And we determined that really the only way to control for that is to control the production of that corn. And more specifically, how we're not just growing, but how we're applying nitrogen, because corn is a very nitrogen intensive product, right? So that's kind of how we started there. And then from there, it went to the rye, because one of the growers who was growing the corn was growing rye as an overwintering crop back
Cover
where
crop.
they had grown the corn to
Yeah.
fix that nitrogen. And we're like, hey, don't till that under. We want you to take it to harvest. And so that was an Abruzzi rye. And so some of our first ryes are using an Abruzzi rye, which is not typical and not common, which was grown here. And then from there, it morphed into the wheat. And so today, 100% of the corn we grow, 100% of the wheat, a lot of the rye, not all the rye. And in the early days, all of the malt was grown. The barley was grown here. It was malted here locally. We've kind of outgrown that source, or they've outgrown us. Turns out when Sierra Nevada puts a much, much larger brewery right in next door at Mills River, they become to the preferred client. So, but about 70,000 pounds, when we're running 3 shifts, we go through about 70,000 pounds of locally produced grain every single day.
Wow.
70,000 pounds a day. Now, the other thing that's really important about that, okay, so why did we do it? Because in order to control the quality of the distillate, we need to control the quality of the grain, but we're also controlling how it's produced. And that's important. There's this whole concept of regenerative ag that we're hearing more and more about. Every single product that we taste today was produced using regeneratively grown grain, because that's just about the only way that we grow grain in this part of North Carolina.
Right.
Which means there's no monocrop, no monoculture. We're rotating the crops. We don't ever plant corn in the same place twice. As again, corn is a very nitrogen intensive product.
Right.
If you don't want to put a lot of petrochemical based fertilizer on the land, which you don't for a whole lot of reasons, you've got to rotate those crops, which is what we do. And by taking care of the soil, not trying to put a round peg in a square hole, we're sequestering more carbon dioxide. We're getting better quality products, and frankly, we're paying less for those products. So it's a win-win-win.
Hey y'all, Allan Cogan here with Crafted Conversations. If you want to support the show and the mission of sharing the stories of craft, head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedcombos. I'd really appreciate throwing a couple bucks my way to help me pay for travel, the equipment that I use, the time that I spend editing, all the software that I use. I really appreciate any support you can give me. And if you can't afford a couple bucks, at least give me some feedback, or go over to your YouTube and subscribe or follow us on Spotify. Anything helps to make sure that we share the story of craft and give these small business owners a little limelight and get them out on a platform that really showcases what they're doing. I can't do this without you guys or your support, so I would really appreciate you pitching in and helping out. So I'll see you out there, and I really appreciate it. Cheers.
This episode is brought to you by the American Distilling Institute. Be sure to register for the 2025 Convention and Expo today. Visit www.distilling.com.
I joke with my friends about one day starting a distillery, doing things just to play. But now you're also farming. Was that did you have to learn all that as you did it?
No, I know about the production methodology. I'm not driving the, no-till drill is a huge part of this.
Sure.
So, it's not like when you go to the Midwest and you see these huge discs and this cloud of topsoil blowing off.
Right.
Everything is subsurface. No-till drill means we're keeping the topsoil there.
Okay.
Rotating that overwintering. Yeah, I grew up on a farm. I understood all of that, but I'm not a farmer.
Sure.
I'm a distiller. We know enough about farming to partner with really great growers who kind of take it from there, but it's kind of like Back to the Future. We're using these old ways of doing, because those old ways are sometimes the right ways and the best ways.
Yeah.
The spent grains. So all that spent grain is going back out to feed cattle. Some are our beef cows. Our son Trinity runs the cattle operation for us, so it really is a family business. Most of it's going to a dairy. We're not in the dairy business, but it turns out dairy cows love this spent grain, and we produce a lot of it. So it's really a full cycle. If we look at the sustainability piece, the other part of that, 0 gallons of processed water goes into a treatment plant. All that processed water goes with that slurry, with those spent grains. It's about 15 to 18,000 gallons of water a day that farmer is not having to pump to satisfy his dairy cows, because it's coming with all of that feed.
Sure.
Again, back to the sustainability piece, we're working on our Energy Star compliance. It's not easy to do that as a distillery, but the way that we manage BTUs, this is a BTU intensive industry. We burn a lot of gas, we burn a lot of electricity. We're probably more efficient than most. The way that we do that, we recapture that waste heat to preheat all of that water, so we're not using any direct steam injection in the cook process, which people are like going, what? How's that possible? Well, because we're stripping it off the distillation process. So there's all of these things that we're doing that really kind of form a balance. And you're not going to see that at a lot of distilleries, but you see it here because we set forth to build a process, where we could do good and do well at the same time, and you really can.
Yeah, and I was actually really impressed when we were walking around, you showing me all the things, and I was like, I didn't even think about that. That's such a cool innovation. I'm wondering if is there a moment where that will catch fire as the proper process to do it?
So I think that there's already operations out there that are doing parts and pieces.
Yeah.
We've just been very deliberate. My background was, I started my career working for Lawrence Livermore National Lab, Sandia National Lab, really focused on sustainability and alternative energy. And sometimes just doing some of the simplest things make the most meaningful impact.
Sure.
So, recapturing waste heat, that's not rocket science. It's just kind of common sense.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily see that. And so putting in those heat scavenging devices to strip that waste heat, because otherwise it's just going out to a farm and it's going to burn somebody, right? So, instead of shipping out 200 plus degrees spent grain, it's going out at 120 degrees because we've scavenged and reused all that waste heat, which means I'm not burning any gas, for the heating. We burn a lot of gas in the distillation, but we don't burn the gas in the cooking process.
One of the things I've always found interesting especially with craft, is that the bias that I think, at least my mind, when I get to sit down and talk to you, you're the guy who does it, and then I hear about all your processes, your sustainability efforts, whatever. To me, that makes the product almost taste better. I know it's not actually putting much on the flavor of the product, but because I know the process, maybe it does.
So the ag piece does.
Sure. Yeah.
So again, we talk about terroir, right?
Yes.
Terroir is widely accepted in the wine industry. If you don't believe that there's terroir in whiskey, you need to look a little deeper. There's absolutely terroir in whiskey, right? There's even a book, called The Terroir of Whiskey, right?
Yes, there is.
Right. One of our good friends wrote that book. But in any case, we've got all of these parts and pieces which play into that final product. And the grain, that terroir, starts with the grain. So where that soil, or the minerality of the soil, where that grain is grown, that's important. Again, goes the wild yeast that are all around us, the aging conditions of these warehouses.
Yeah.
That all plays a role. So you actually do taste it in the final product. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, and I think my larger point was that I think there's an element of accessibility and understanding and transparency that if I know that the distillery is doing these things, I get to talk to you, not a PR firm. I think there's an element of like, this is a great product. It's local and it's made well, and therefore to me it tastes even better because of that. I think that's an interesting psychology of when you're tasting a product.
Well, I would tell you that if that is part of your brand story, it's really important that you can walk that walk, right?
Yeah, right.
So, one of our clients, that is foundational, and so their ability to talk about sustainability, to talk about regenerative agriculture, doesn't really ring through and through if that's not how that project and that product is produced, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I would tell you that none of the awards that we've won for these products that are sitting in front of us, while it makes us feel good after the fact, that these products won because of what was in the bottle and how it was produced.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know that story.
Right.
But I think that your point is well taken. I mean, that's why we're here, right? Is to allow brands to speak truth to their story,
Absolutely.
to tell that story with authenticity. And it does matter. Consumers care. Consumers care about truth.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy doing what I do with this, is that I genuinely believe that your story and your background is almost your number one marketing tool. Your bottle can look good, you can have a great label, and it can look good on the shelf. But if you don't have something to back it up, and you don't have the chops to tell that story or find some way to do it, you're not going to find the right market.
Well, and so I mean, that's one of the great joys of being able to be in this business is that, bringing our clients in, bringing these brands in, and this distillery becomes their distillery.
Yeah.
We talked about what happens in the event center, and well, no, we don't host weddings here, but we let our brands come in and film there, and it's all about them. And so having our facility become their facility for that moment is, I think it's important to the brand story. And again, they're leveraging our story, but it's now their story, it's our story.
Right. And I think it's a good thing that there's no shame in that there's no shame in there.
Well, not everybody can or wants to do this.
Yeah.
So I am particularly good at building and running manufacturing operations. And this is a manufacturing operation. That's what it is.
Yeah.
We can talk about the tradition and the nostalgia, but we are manufacturing stuff. We are making stuff every day. And I know how to do that. I will be the first to tell you, I'm not the best at label design. I am not the best at distribution models. I am not the best at brand building. And we rely on, and that's probably why our brand is 10 years old and it's no bigger than it is, right? So having a great product isn't enough. You've got to have the everything, right? But on the flip side, isn't it nice to know that if you're all about building the brand and you don't want to run a manufacturing plant, this is not cheap to do. No offense to anybody who's running a 100-gallon pot still, but it's very, very difficult running a small batch system to get this sort of consistency.
Absolutely.
And achieve this sort of nuance. It's physically really difficult to do, if not impossible.
Capital intensive.
And so we're giving these very small micro brands the ability to put out products, to develop products, to create products that they just couldn't do otherwise. They could not do it otherwise. And so, this sounds so cliche, but it takes a village, right? So we've got what we do really well, and we've got our brand partners like Brothers Bond. They're great at building the brands and, creating that story. And we give them the ability to talk about that story with authenticity, with truth. So it's, great brands have to do both things well, if not great.
Absolutely. And I love that you are passionate about doing that service. That's awesome. I love hearing that from you, because I could see where it's just a.
Well, again, this has been a very interesting industry over the past 5 years. So we've gone from feast to famine, right? And so 4 years ago, there was a lot of contract producers suddenly said, "Oh, we're not in the contract business anymore. Good luck." We love the contract business. We think that you can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Sure.
So even as this brand develops, we want to continue to grow that contract production business. There's no reason to turn that off.
Right.
And it's just such an important part of how we got here and what we do.
Well, I think we should probably cheers to the great work you do.
Okay.
Since we have things in front of us.
Let's do it.
What do you want to start with?
So I think we'll start with let's start with the rye and then move our way to bourbon, and then finish off with what I think I'm most excited about in the American whiskey space today, which is American single malt.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So we'll finish with that because I got a lot to say about ASM, American single malt, right? But we'll start with the rye. So what we're going to start with is our double rye. Yep. So the double rye is a blend of 2 mash bills. Okay. So this is a blend of a barely legal rye, so a 51-39-10.
Okay.
And a very high rye, a 95.5. Neither of those mash bills did we create, right? Those are existing mash bills. Matter of fact, most of what we do, mash bills are just ratios of grain. That's really not the most important thing. What's really more important in those ratios of grain are what did we do with the grain?
Mm.
How did we do the fermentation? What kind of yeast did we use? How did we do the distillation? What sort of cooperage did we put it up with? Where was that cooperage aging over time? These things, I would argue, and you'll get a lot of hate mail for this, they're way more important in our view than the ratio of grains.
Sure.
That's where the nuance really comes through. But again, a lot of people are like, oh, is that your mash bill? We don't own a mash bill. So far as I know, you can't own a ratio.
I wish I had the stats in front of me. There have been a number of distilleries who I've talked to, I won't name names, who have said, oh, that our mash bill is proprietary.
Yeah, our mash bills are not proprietary. We'll tell you exactly how much grain is in there. We may not spend a whole lot of time talking about some other nuances, but we'll tell you exactly what's in here, right? And so here is a blend of a 95.5 and a blend, or blended with a 51-39-10, okay?
Beautiful.
So what's really cool about this is that we do a secondary finish. We actually take a beautiful 70-16-14, again, not our mash bill. There's a couple of other big brands that use that mash bill. It's a great mash bill. But that wheated bourbon, we dump that wheated bourbon and then we re-barrel it. So we do a secondary barrel finishing using an ex-wheated bourbon cask.
Oh.
And the reason that we do that is that our goal, my wife and I, we did this together, was develop a very accessible, very approachable rye. Rye has a well-deserved reputation for being very spicy, very hot, a little brutal.
Yep.
We wanted something that had enough rye spice to punch through in a sweet cocktail like a Manhattan, but we wanted it to be accessible and approachable to someone who was new to whiskey. We wanted it to be something that you could drink neat, and we think we've hit it with this. So we'll start with the nose.
Oh, yeah.
So clearly, that's a rye nose. We know that's a rye. But it's done differently. It's more floral.
I was going to say, a lot more of a floral sweet punch of a rye.
Yeah. And so that's that combination of the high corn and the high rye playing together, that secondary barrel finish. So you know that's a rye.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very sweet rye. It's almost honey-like.
Yeah.
Not to put words in your mouth.
No, I know, because you say it, it's like it tastes like that. No, it's a very, I like what you said, it's drinkable. It's a drinkable rye for people who are easily...
If we sit here long enough, there will be none of this left. Right? So...
No, it's because I think a lot of ryes do get that, I don't want to say bad rap, it's accurate, it's spicy, it's a little harsh. And a lot of that sometimes is people mistake proof for spice. But I think it's that honey sweetness. I mean, that's good. It tastes like it's almost back sweetened.
Yeah.
I know it's not, but
no, good. There's absolutely nothing added here. It's just rye whiskey. It's just rye whiskey. But what's interesting about this product is that we get people who are new to whiskey,
mm-hmm.
and this is not sexist at all. It's just statement of the data, the facts. We have a lot of guys in here who bring their wives along, And it's the guy that wanted to stop at the distillery because he's a bourbon geek. And the wife is like, oh my God, how much more of this can I take? But we go through the tour and the tasting, and it is remarkable, whether it's male or female, how many people who are new to whiskey, oh, that's my favorite.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
You would never think that would be the case with a rye.
Yeah. I was reading somewhere, I forget what, I think it was an article talking about why did bourbon take over, and I think there was the idea that the American culture is much more of a sweet tooth, and that it just ignored rye completely. But then that doesn't make sense for rum, because rum fell by the wayside during the bourbon surge too.
I think it's because we grow a lot of corn.
I think that's the real reason.
I think that's the real reason.
But this article was trying to make it sound like, but there's a lot of sweet ryes out there. What are you talking about?
I think it's because we grow a lot of corn. And it happens to make a really cost-effective distillate.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Oh, that's great.
So that is our double rye. Now let's move over. How do you like the packaging?
I
Like
love
the label
that.
design.
It's
I did that all by myself. All right. So this is a brand new product that we are releasing. This is our bottled and bond rye.
okay.
Southern Star bottled and bond rye.
There's not that many bottled and bond
There's
ryes
not a
out
lot
there.
of bottled and bond ryes. There's not a lot of bottled and bond bourbons.
No, yeah.
Well, sorry, weeded bourbons. Let me go back and correct that. Weeded bourbons. We're seeing more and more bottled and bond ryes. We're seeing more and more bottled and bond weeded bourbons. We've been doing these for a while, but we're just now going to release this as a bottled and bond product. It is a 513910.
Ooh. 10 being...
10 being malt.
Oh, malt, okay.
Yeah, so 51% rye, barely legal rye, 39% corn,
Gotcha.
10% malted barley.
Barley. Interesting.
Clearly 100 proof.
Yeah.
But again, developed to not be overly astringent, to be hot. So that's at 100 proof. That's just super. I mean, I would tell you that drinks more like a 90 proof to me than 100 proof.
Yeah.
So you want to know our secret?
Tell me.
I'll tell you the secret.
Breaking news.
Yeah, it's breaking news. It's all about the yeast.
Sure.
It's all about the yeast. And so, we're using a yeast strain that is going to be typically seen more over in bourbons.
Okay.
Specifically, it's the strain that we're going to use for our select weeded bourbons.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say about that.
That's. I'm not going to ask more questions. If I tell you, I'll have to kill you. I'm impressed with how much that malt comes through and complements the rye spice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a big malt fan. I like chocolate.
So here's the other secret that cannot be easily duplicated because almost nobody can get this stuff. A Abruzzi rye. Abruzzi rye. It's not a Bracetta, a Abruzzi, which is grown typically in the Southeast. It's an ancient variety. It's an old variety. I shouldn't say ancient. It's an heirloom variety. We grow a lot of it here in the Carolinas. You know where most of it ends up? It ends up as a seed, and then it's shipped throughout the world as a cover crop to control land erosion, soil erosion. But if you let it go all the way through and you harvest it, it makes a beautiful, beautiful rye product. So there's a secret, a Abruzzi rye.
Abruzzi rye. Was it being used back in the day for distillation?
I don't know. I can only assume that it was because it is a heirloom variety.
Yeah.
And it grows particularly well. That's great. That's a great question. My assumption is that it was grown here historically. I don't have definitive proof of that. So we talked about like these old heritage brands, Hunting Creek rye, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what variety was used in there.
Sure. I mean, it stands to reason that they were playing with whatever was growing.
Yeah.
Or they grew whatever they had access to.
Well, I think both.
Yeah, right.
I think both. I think that they were opportunistic.
Yeah.
Right. They did not have the ability to kind of force round pegs and square holes like we do today.
Right.
You know, we can grow corn on the moon if we want to. It doesn't mean that we should, but you could, right?
I think I just actually released an episode as we speak. It's my current episode out with Mystic
Oh yeah,
up in Durham, and they're working on aging bourbon in space.
yeah.
We'll see.
Way to go, Jonathan.
Blitz is a great guy. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. We are not sending any barrels into space.
Talk about cost prohibitive.
I'm going to leave that to my good friend Blitz and let him. He can have the whole space race with the bourbon thing. I like it right here on the ground in North Carolina myself.
There you go.
All right, so we've completed our rye sampling. Okay, let's go to bourbon. So we're going to go next. Oh, hang on, I got to brag a little bit. Double rye just double golded.
Oh yes.
At the New York International Spirits Competition, which is a great accolade. We're now going to go to bourbon. We're going to start with our bottled in bond Paragon. So that is a 70, 16, 14 wheated bourbon, 70% corn, 16% wheat, 14% malted barley.
Okay.
Bottled in bond product. This product just won double platinum and best in class at the Ascots. Best in class at the Ascots.
That's pretty awesome.
That's pretty awesome. I am not aware of a non-Kentucky product ever taking, for the wheated bourbon category.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of another non-Kentucky product doing that. So it's definitely a great product. I would say punches above its weight a little bit. We're very, very proud to bring that home to North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard Fred Minnick talk about you guys a bit, which is awesome.
Fred is yet to visit.
What?
He is yet to visit.
What are you doing, Fred?
I got to get him up here. I've got, he's been busy building his whiskey empire, but we need to get him in here.
I know. I'm just trying to ride his coattails a little bit on YouTube.
No, but Van and I have known Fred for a long time. He's known us, but we've never broken bread together.
Okay.
We've never had him in here, but that's definitely something that we want to have happen sooner than later.
All right. Well, I'll send this. I'll clip this part right here. I'll just send it to him. Pete's waiting. Oh wow.
That's everything you want in a wheated bourbon.
And I love wheated bourbons.
Yeah.
God, that's so good. What kind of wheat is it? Soft red?
It's red winter wheat, soft red winter wheat. Yeah, 100% we grow. The this particular bottle is 86% North Carolina grain.
Okay.
Yeah, 86% because it's all the wheat and all the corn. Yeah, but I mean, so people are like, why do you make that? Well, because that's what I like. Everything that we're tasting here is, with one exception, and I love it, but that's a different story. It's what I like.
Sure.
Wheated bourbon. So, always been a huge, wheated bourbon fan. So we make a wheated bourbon, right? The double rye, the mash bills that I chose are because those are mash bills that I've always, kind of gravitated towards. We've just done it. We've done it our way.
My first foray into wheated bourbons, once I started expanding my palate in more than just, traditional bourbon, was Woodford's wheated bourbon. That's a good product, whatever. But that's the first one I was like, oh, I love that flavor of wheat. I didn't know that even existed. And now that craft is doing more and more.
So here's the thing about wheated bourbon. It's not easy to do well early.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is I see that you've got a baby on board sticker.
I have a 1-year-old.
Okay, you're going to learn that they're not always as cute and cuddly. They're going to go through their terrible twos. They're going to go through their teenage years, right?
Yep.
But they come back to you.
Yeah.
All right? Wheated bourbon is super similar to raising kids. And anybody who's a parent's going to be able to, this will resonate, right? They'll be able to understand what I'm saying. We love our kids, even when they're misbehaving. And we know that ultimately they're good humans because we raised them, and they're going to come back to us. Wheated bourbons are exactly the same. So they start out sweet. Oh boy, isn't that nice? And then you taste it in about 2 or 3 years. And, oh my goodness, it's so grassy. It's so like immature. I don't love this. I've made a huge mistake. I laid down thousands of barrels. What am I going to do? And then somewhere around year 4, it begins to redeem itself, but it's still not ready. But you're like, okay, I like the path that you're on.
Yeah.
And then about year 5, it's like, oh, I see what you did right there. Okay, we love that, right? And so I would tell you that wheated bourbons are really, really great, but they require time and patience. Time and patience.
Are there young wheated bourbons on the market?
Probably none that I love.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't tell you. So when it comes to what's going on in the market, ask a bourbon collector. I have the most boring bar. My bar is filled full of experiments.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have everybody else's bottle, and I'm not up late reading the whatever the podcast is or listening to the podcast about what's new in bourbon today.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There may be some young wheated bourbons, but I would be surprised if they are well loved.
Well, I only ask because I think wheated bourbons have made a bigger splash recently.
Yeah, over the last year or two.
Yeah, and I know there's also a bigger splash in new make. That there are a lot of places that are selling more new make now than ever. I read
as a like a substitute for like a vodka or something like that.
Yeah, or like for moonshine margaritas or whatever. Yeah, and I'm curious if there's any meat.
We sell an awful lot of new make, but we treat it kind of as a novelty, as a specialty.
Yeah.
And I was actually going to take it out of distribution, and I got this huge pushback from our on-premise customers, like, "Oh, we use it for this and we use it for that." I was like, I had no idea it had this like cult following.
Right.
I mean, you've tried our new make; it's particularly good.
It's great,
and it's not always like we talked earlier, right? So that barrel is going to make up for a lot of errors in manufacturing. But if you don't have the errors in manufacturing, it's that much better.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's most of the moonshine products that are on the market, the big ones, they started out as GNS.
Yeah.
Right? Not a lot of new makes out there. But the bartenders, the on-premise guys, they really love it because it's got that natural character and sweetness, that what we call cereal forward note that
Right.
you're just not going to get from a GNS based product.
Right. Yeah, I especially the advent of ASM, I've seen a couple places that are releasing new make of ASM.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
I did not know that.
Brother Justice, I think, is the big one.
Ah,
I forget where they're at, but
interesting.
they released they just won an award somewhere. I don't know if it was ACSA or ADI, but they had something that was like a new make ASM. It's actually pretty good. But,
well, you tried some of ours coming off the column today.
Yeah, and I did, and that was exciting for me because I know like how often you get to try.
And then you tried it coming off the pot still.
I know, and it was very different.
Different animals altogether.
I want a bottle of both and do comparisons because
Right.
there's
I'll probably work that out
over the course of a week.
Right. All right. So with wheated bourbon, now let's go the opposite end of the spectrum. We're going to go to the Cask Strength
Okay.
High Rye, which is our Southern Star bourbon. This is a 60-36-4. You may know that mash bill.
Oh yeah.
It's an MGP mash bill. That's how we started, and we still make a lot of it. Make a lot of 75-21-4 too. But this is almost 113 proof, 112.6. This has become one of my new favorite things.
Really?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, gun to my head, I'm a high rye bourbon fan over anything else. Like when
A moment ago it was wheated. Now it's okay. You're very fickle.
I know I'm very fickle. I love all your products; they're all perfect.
Oh, okay, we'll take that.
It's ass kissing 101. No, I grew up on. Not to say grew up. That makes my parents sound horrible. When I was 21, no younger, Old Granddad.
Oh yeah.
Cheap, accessible, high rye.
Yeah.
That flavor profile is what got me into bourbon,
Cool.
and I love it. And I still have a bottle of Old Granddad. It's easy to
Yeah.
make a cocktail and not worry about opening a
I
bag.
remember the day when Old Weller was sitting right beside the old granddad.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Bottom shelf.
Not
Yeah.
anymore.
Not anymore.
Times have changed.
Yeah, so this is our version of a 60-36-4 cask strength, no dilution. This was barreled at 110, I believe, 110 or 105. We vacillate between 105 and 110. I'm guessing based on the proof, this was probably 110.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. Sorry.
tastes like home.
Tastes like home. Sorry, it's better than your weeded.
Well, like I told you, it's become one of my, no. It didn't win best of the best, but it's pretty. I don't think we've entered it yet. So
No, there you go.
yeah, we'll enter it. So we'll see what happens.
Oh, that's good. How much proof fluctuation do you see in the barrel?
It depends on where it is in the stack. So as you can see, everything is palletized.
Yep.
We didn't really talk a lot about our storage, but these buildings, we're in one of our rick houses. We call it a rick house. It's really a palletized storage warehouse. We don't use ricking. And everybody was like, oh, why don't you use ricking? Well, because, not many people are building rick houses anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, but isn't that traditional? Yeah, but you know why? Because it didn't have forklifts. We have these things called forklifts today. And the pallet is a much more effective and efficient way for us to store that product. But we got to make sure that we're doing it the right way. So these warehouses aren't warehouses that we leased. We built specifically to control airflow,
Sure.
to control temperature. No, I'm not air conditioning. I'm not heating, but we can control that how that barrel turns over the course of its season. And we want 4 distinct seasons. And we want that barrel inventory to turn, but we don't want it to stay too cold too long. Those winter months is where we get that extraction. But that barrel is basically, it's extracting all that good stuff and it's dormant until it heats back up.
Sure.
So we want to really kind of shorten that extraction cycle. And we can do that by controlling the temperature and the airflow passively just by the ventilation in the building.
Gotcha.
So there's a series of vents along the bottom of the building. They pull through and breathe through those stacks. You see these are actual, hollow pallets, which is not necessarily typical. Cost a little bit more to make those, but that ensures that we're getting airflow on the heads as well as all the way around the barrel. And then we've got air channels every so often that allow for that air to pull through. The air enters the building at the bottom, pulls through, and then kind of exits through ridge vents on the top. But that aging and that, again, controlling the temperature is super important. You asked a question earlier, have you discovered a sweet spot relative to age? And the fact is, not in these buildings, because they're designed to kind of be the same everywhere.
Sure.
Now, with one exception, where we are in the stack. So when we do a blend, we're going to cut vertically through the stack because the conditions on the bottom are very different than the conditions on the top. So we should see that variability in what we call the Z dimension, right?
Yep.
Elevation. But we shouldn't see it in the X and Y if we look at the cross section of the floor.
Gotcha. Interesting. The more I've traveled, the more I do see palletized versus the old traditional rick house. And the rick houses are picturesque, right? They're very nice.
Well, that's
for
why
photos.
Yeah, that's why the tour is always going to take you into the rick house.
Right. And
But again, it's whether it's Scotch, Irish, or American whiskey, for about 20 years, the big strategics have been building palletized storage.
Yeah.
Because it produces a great product, and really, some would argue, more consistently, certainly more efficiently.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and
Now there's still that old school. I won't name any names. There's still that old school. There's one major bourbon maker out there that all they do is rick houses. I get it. Okay, they can have that.
Yeah, it makes a good postcard.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you. This is off the rails. It just made me think of it though. Have you heard of the what's the company? They were at ADI last year. Modern Cooperage.
Yeah.
That's an interesting twist on tradition because that can't be called bourbon, obviously, but it's a 70-something gallon pressurized, controlled steel drum with staves in there.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious if that ever takes a foothold. Let's say 50 years in the future when American white oak might not be as plentiful. Does that?
Yes and no.
You know what I mean?
Okay. So I'm a big believer in their technology. As a matter of fact, we've bought their product and
Okay.
we use their product, but we don't use it for aging. We use it for secondary finishing.
Oh,
So
okay.
we find it to be more like writing a prescription for a finish profile. And again, we're all about process and technique. And those super expensive 60-year-old Armagnac barrels they're very sexy. They're beautiful to look at,
They're expensive.
but they're expensive. And what I get today is not what I'm going to get next year,
Sure.
right? The modern cooperage, and this is not a commercial for modern cooperage, but we really like the fact that you're dosing the product and you can write that prescription for how you want to dose the product for secondary finishing.
Yeah.
But we're always going to use a mature aged product that was aged in 53-gallon white oak barrels. And then we're going to introduce whether it's a cognac cask or Armagnac cask, whatever, that secondary finishing. I think it's great for that.
Yeah. I'm curious to see where that goes, because I was enamored by their presentation in their booth last year. I was like, this
Yeah.
is so cool.
Yeah, I don't think that we've got any real shortage of, and I'll probably get hate mail for this, but the stats would suggest that we've got more white oak today than we had 100 years ago.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I don't know that we're in jeopardy of having a white oak shortage.
No.
But again, I love that technology for the reasons I just said. It allows you to be more prescriptive in how you dose and control that secondary finishing process.
For sure. Well,
You like that?
I do.
So as we've been talking, it's
opened up.
yeah. You noticed that nose?
Just
it's
on the
like,
nose,
it's
it's
like
like-
the vanilla. Is it not just like?
It's like pure vanilla extract with some clove.
It's almost abusive. There's so much vanilla. Vanilla abuse.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's my
That's your
that's
jam.
my favorite
Okay.
so far.
All right. So we're going to finish with the thing that I am most excited about,
Okay.
which is American single malt.
Yes.
Okay. So we built, as I shared with you earlier, we built this distillery more than 10 years ago, believing that American single malt was going to be a thing. So we always think about American whiskey in terms of bourbon and secondarily rye. But as much as we love bourbon, it's really only loved and understood in America, Canada, maybe Germany, Australia, but when we go we really go to Europe, we really go to Asia, it's a curiosity. It's not a staple. It's a curiosity.
Right.
Malt is not America's whiskey. It's the world's whiskey. So if we're looking at, what is the new, wild, frontier out there for American whiskey, as much as I love bourbon and rye, we got a lot of it, right? We think it's American single malt. So the ratification that occurred in December of this year or January, depending on how you count, we think was huge. We think it was important. We've been waiting on it for more than a decade. So We're very proud of that. Now, our approach to American single malt is maybe different than a lot of the brands that are well-loved and well-known. So we think about the Westward, Westland, the Balconies. These are great products, but they're produced in more traditional, what I would consider to be Scotch style.
Sure.
And that's not a dig. It's just, and they're for the most part, it's not done grain on. They've watered that wash. That wash is then run in a pot still in a batch process, which is great because I love that product. But that's not how we run whiskey here.
Right.
So we run whiskey using a 16-tray continuous process column. All right. We run whiskey grain on. It's grain on fermented. It's grain on distilled using direct steam injection. That's how bourbon is made, predominantly.
Sure.
Right. And that's exactly how we run the malt. And we think it's so unique and so uniquely American that it takes this international spirit and really takes it and personifies everything about American whiskey right within it. So this is not to take a thing away from these other producers, but it's to say that we can take what is not typically associated with American whiskey. We can take this beautiful malted barley, this really fragrant product, floral product, and we can produce it using traditional American methodology to produce something that's unlike anything else you've had.
Sure.
So if you drink bourbon, this is not unfamiliar. If you love Scotch, this is not unfamiliar, but it's also not the same.
Right.
It stands on its own. The other thing about this product is that, we're using a combination of used cask and new oak, which is, I think, it's unique to be able to blend those two things together. But enough talking. Let's do some tasting.
So I hate to put it on the spot. Are you testing me? Because you poured from that twice.
Oh my gosh. Are you testing me? I can't see that label from back here.
You poured from that one when we did the
Oh my
rye.
God. Well, you're going to have to edit that out. I was sitting there going, That's why I wasn't saying anything. I was like, that is not what I expected. I wasn't going to go, what the hell? All right, here. Edit that out.
Yeah, no, I'm going to keep it in. I'm kidding.
All right, so let's try that over. Now, literally, this thing is like the same size as the...
As that bottle, yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
that's funny. So you said this is 6 years old.
it's actually... Yeah, well, it says 6. It's like 6.5.
Okay. So you decided early on, I shouldn't say early on, 6.5 years ago.
No, we decided more than 10 years ago. So you can't run malt grain on easily.
No.
Because, all right, so that stripping column is designed to run 56 pounds per bushel. Okay, because bourbon's primarily corn, it's 56 pounds per bushel. Malt is going to be 34 to 38 pounds per bushel.
Okay.
And it's full of husk.
Yeah.
Right? And so your system has to be designed to accommodate something that's 2/3 of the density and full of husk.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to have a mess.
Yeah.
And so we run it, and that's, there's a lot of reasons why malt whiskey is produced the way that, why is it lauded? Well, because, historically it was direct fire. And it's going to scorch if we've got grain in there.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily that way anymore. It's usually steam jacketed now, but still those standard traditional production techniques are there because that was the limit of the technology that they had then.
Right.
Right. So, batch production was the technology, not continuous.
Right.
But I would argue that I'm gun shy now. Okay, that's more what I expected.
This is American Agave.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a malt. Man.
Let's see which batch it is. Do we know what batch this is? Do we know if this was the barrel 1 or the barrel 2?
I got that from Sam's cat.
Let's see if I can pick it up. So we did this big event this past weekend. We brought in DJ Gamble, Bruzel. If you haven't seen it, you got to go watch the episode when he was here. But we're producing his bourbon for him, and we're doing the blending. And I was like, I want you to try this malt. And he was like, clearly you don't watch my channel because I don't like malt. And I was like, well, I know. Humor me.
Yeah.
What do you think the over-under is? I was 70% you'll like it. I thought it was 95% he was going to like it because I knew why he didn't like malt. I knew why he didn't like it. There's just certain flavor characteristics and profiles that's not appealing to everybody, right?
Sure.
But he tried this, and then he was like flabbergasted. He was like, "That's not a malt. That's not." I was like, "Swear to God, it's a malt," but it's malt done differently.
Right.
It's malt produced in that prototypical traditional grain on direct steam injection continuous process. This is how we produce bourbon. You can also run malt that way.
I'm trying to think of any other malt that I've had recently that's a column.
So
because there's a lot of pot still.
So what's so interesting about this we just tested this back to back against a 100 proof rye, which I erroneously poured into the tasting glass, right? But isn't it interesting that something that's almost 116 proof is so palatable?
Yeah.
A malt as compared to 100 proof rye.
Yes.
I mean, not that the rye was not palatable, but this is almost, I think it's easier.
100%.
I mean, I don't want to, I mean, so we talked about ways to describe. I just feel like it's like your palate is like being pillowed. It's like on a cushion with this. I know that's nobody's ever thought of that analogy before. People have thought of things like wet saddle leather, but I'm like, no, this is like just like kind of like my palate's on a pillow. It's relaxed. It's not asking too much. It's just there. I'm just kind of hanging out.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just how my brain works. There's a lot of referential flavors in malt that the common person, I think, jives better with than like a rye.
Now, you know what? I never thought of that.
Because there's more espresso.
Nah, I think that you could be, yeah, but so much of that is coming through the induced flavor profiles.
Sure.
That's coming from the chocolate malt, the smoke, etc. I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
But remember, this is unadulterated.
No, I know.
This is, I mean, honestly, this is just distiller's malt. Now, the way that we're producing it right now, we're not using distiller's malt because we don't really need distiller's malt in this. We're using some different varieties, but it's just, it's malt in its purest form.
Yeah.
Naked. We're not doing anything to it, right? It's just, it is what it is.
Is that the name of the product?
I'm not
naked
going to
malt?
say that. I'm not going to say that. I read that in an article someplace.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question about this. Do you want to get to a point where you want to play with the additives, the smoking, the different stuff that exists?
Truth in advertising, we've done it.
Okay.
That's what we run on that pot still.
Okay.
So we run what's called the spirit malt on the column, and then the character malt we run on the pot still. Now, what you're tasting right now is 100% spirit malt. So, that would be my blending base, my 9 parts to, the 1 part character malt.
Gotcha.
I may never use the character malt, to be honest with you, not in my product. I may sell that off to a client.
Okay.
Because I just love that.
Oh, yeah, it's great by itself.
And I can tell you, it's barrel number 2. So we had 2 barrels that we selected from. Off camera, I've got Emma, who's our project manager lead on this. She was very helpful with the big event that we had last week, but we had 2 barrels that we were selecting from. We thought for sure it was going to be barrel 2. For some reason, barrel 1 won. Same batch, run at the same time, just the nuance of 2 different barrels. It just goes to show the power that an individual barrel can have.
Yeah.
But we were all sure that this one was going to win. And it just goes to show that just what I like, even though I'm an expert, doesn't necessarily win the popular vote.
Right.
Right. And we have not adopted the electoral system here. So
you guys do
still the popular vote.
Ranked choice.
So that's so good. We'll have a little more for the rest of our discussion.
Yeah. That is.
Do you like, so I'm just like asking all sorts of leading questions, but I mean, honest to God, I want to know, what do you think about this? Your unvarnished opinion right now in front of God and everybody on camera.
Pete just asked me, why am I the best? And tell me how.
That's not what I said. I want to know because you like American single malt. So I want to know how you feel about this.
I think this is such a great showcase of something that is just simple.
As he pushes his glass over.
As he pushes, yeah. No, I kind of wish I had this whenever I talk to people about single malt, because there are a lot of single malts in the market that do
You're
a lot
in luck. I know a guy.
No, but there's a lot of single malts on the market that do a lot of finishing.
Yeah.
And there's room for that because there's sherry casks and there's all those things. Fine. The Scotch does it. It's great. Sometimes I love a sherry bomb. It depends on what I'm feeling for that night, whatever. This as an unadulterated, just simple showcase of what malt flavor can do is fantastic.
Yeah.
I know you want to use this as a blending base.
Well, I mean, I already told you that for our product, I imagine it's just going to be this.
I think
I like
should be.
And so the thing with all of the specialty finishing, okay, I had it, but I don't want it again tonight.
Yeah, right.
And I don't want it tomorrow night. You know, if I had like that, big fudge sundae every day, it's not special.
Right.
But this is just like that, it's simple. It's not adulterated. It's good just like it is.
Yes.
And, that could be your daily drinker.
Yeah. And that's not to say that it wouldn't also be good if you take some and put it in a stout cask.
I just think it's amazing, as a distiller, as a producer, that we don't have to do anything to it.
Oh, yeah. Makes your life
just
easy.
Special. No, it's just special, just like it is.
Yeah.
And this goes back to why I think that malt is so underappreciated and under-recognized in the United States, because we always attribute it to something that's like, it's trying very hard to be something that's, not as easy.
Do you think this could go longer? What would it do in this climate in America?
So I will tell you what will happen. It's just like bourbon. You're going to get to a point you can't age this product 20 years in new wood.
No.
Now, what's amazing is that same, its brother, who was put up in a second use barrel. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like so not ready for prime time. It doesn't have a lot of color. There's not a lot of extraction. But here's the cool thing that I appreciate about, the Scotch world. It's more about the blending and less about the distillation.
Right.
I'm a distiller.
Yep.
But the art, distilling is a science. It's a science. We're taking tools and we're manipulating tools, and it takes real skill. And you can be creative in how you apply it. But blending is pure art. It's pure art. And I think it's really interesting how when we look at great scotches, the focus is on the blending and less on the distillation. But it's like with any great artist, right? You got to start with a palette full of color, and that's kind of how we look at it. And that's where the distillation comes in. And then you get into the blending, and, that's where the magic happens.
That's one of the things that I've not really deep dived into, and I want to. I told you off camera, I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And whenever I'm home for holidays or to visit family, I make sure to stop by some kind of a distillery and make the most of my trip. And the most recent, I stopped at J. Henry.
Yeah.
And man, are they doing blending? And they know it well. And we had a 30-minute conversation as part of the podcast where he just went down corn varietals and blending. And it made my go, oh my God, there's so much I don't know, and how much of an artistry that alone is. Distillation and figuring out your nose and your palate, that's one thing. But then taking 17 barrels and making one perfect bottle, oh my God, it's such a cool thing that is unknown.
Yep. Agreed.
Anyway. So next is gin and vodka. I'm kidding.
Not here.
No, this is great.
So as it opens up, that nose just kicks in.
God. Pete, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
I'm so glad I can make the trip out here. I've been meaning to for a while, and now I've had an opportunity to do so, and I want to come back. I want to bring all my friends and show them what real distillery does.
Oh, that's great. We will be here.
Yeah. No, I look forward to all the things you do. I look forward to more in the American single malt category. I love your high rye bourbon, better than your wheated, but your wheated is also awesome. All of his products are good. He's holding a gun to me under the table. No, I really appreciate your camaraderie, your welcoming this into this space and letting me shove a camera in your face and sit down on a mic.
My pleasure.
It's been great.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Of course, I'll be back.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Pete. Cheers.
All right.
If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate a follow and share on social media, subscribe to our YouTube, and be sure to give us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Everything you see and hear is out of pocket for us, including travel. If you support our mission of showcasing the amazing stories behind these small businesses, do me a favor and head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedconvos. Buy Me a Coffee is an awesome way to help creators like me with simple one-time donations or a monthly contribution. Every dime goes into giving these breweries, distilleries, and more some much-deserved limelight. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out. Cheers!
This episode of Crafted Conversations was brought to you by the American Distilling Institute. Visit www.distilling.com and www.craftedconvos.com to learn more.